Hello everyone, Jeff here with you for episode number 2 of the Wednesday Night Wrestling Blitz. It's AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite taking on WWE NXT. AEW looking to build off the momentum they got last week with the big ratings win here. Let's see if they get it done here. Let's get underway with the show here. We'll start with AEW first. It took place from Boston, Massachusetts at Boston University. They had your opening match here. It's a first round matchup in the AEW Tag Team Championship Tournament. We had Private Party taking on the Young Bucks. It was noted several times during the match that the Young Bucks are the number 1 overall seed in this tournament, and were the consensus picked by a lot of people, including myself, to go all the way, at least to the finals, if not outright win the tournament. So right there and then, that should maybe have been a clue that something was up. This was the match that everyone expected it would be. A lot of great stuff, a lot of high-flying moves, a lot of fast-paced action here. They gave the match plenty of time and went close to a time limit draw because on AEW they have 20-minute time limits. Both teams get their stuff in. Crowd definitely into this one. The finish, it was a surprise here. Private Party actually won. They won on I believe it was a victory roll, if I'm not mistaken. Pinned one of the Jackson brothers. I forget which one it was. But Private Party upset the Young Bucks here in the first round of the AEW Tag Team Championship Tournament to advance on. I did not see that coming. I mean, that's a big deal, considering, like I said, the Young Bucks are probably one, if not the best tag teams in all of professional wrestling. So, for the Young Bucks, and look, we all know they're part of the elite, they're part of the executive branch of AEW. For the Young Bucks to put over a Private Party like that, that's just a very selfless act. I mean, they didn't have to do that. They could have booked themselves a win here, and it wouldn't have really surprised anyone. But for them to put over Private Party here and have them beat them straight up with, there was no outside shenanigans, no interference, nothing like that. I thought that was a big deal, and the crowd reaction was definitely great here when it was all said and done. Now, I did thought that the Bucks acted a little more heelish here. I mean, nothing really over the top, but they were acting, I thought, a little more heelish here. But still, it was a great match, and it gave it almost 20 minutes. It gave it plenty of time. So the Private Party, and a surprise to a lot of people, and like I said, advancing on. Next up, we had Chris Jericho come out with his new group. Jericho, this is a good promo from Jericho. He basically singles out every member of this new faction he is, and tells why they're part of the faction and all that. He basically just does what he does. I mean, he says all the right things about him. Of course, that being Sammy Guevara, Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. So basically, justifies the existence of the group and why he picked each one of those members. He also shot down fan chants of "We Are the People." Of course, that's referring to Jake Hager. He went on to say that "We the People" sucks and it's dead and buried, and the crowd definitely reacted positive to that. So, of course, now the faction name, Jericho did release the faction name. It's called the Inner Circle. This new group's going to be called the Inner Circle. I mean, it's an okay name. It's not the most creative name I've heard of for a faction, but, I may warm up to it, but it's okay, like I said. I'm not really a big fan of it just yet, but we'll see what happens. So the Inner Circle is this new faction led by AEW World Champion Chris Jericho. But like I said, this promo I thought was pretty good. It's a typical Jericho promo, which are always good, so there was really not too much wrong with it. I thought maybe it ran a little long, especially towards the end, but other than that, it was fine. Next up, we had a number 1 contenders match for the AEW World title. We had Darby Allin taking on Jimmy Havoc. The winner of this match would face Chris Jericho on next week's broadcast in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So this was a great match. This was a great showcase. Both guys used their styles here and just did a lot of great stuff here. Allin doing all of his high-flying stuff. And, Allin's been getting a lot of praise because of the match he had with Cody that ended in a draw, but still a lot of people took very high notice to that. So, anyways, the finish comes after Darby Allin had landed a coffin drop off the top rope and got the win here. He beat Jimmy Havoc in a very good match, I thought. And, having Darby Allin win, to me, was really no surprise. He was my pick, as I mentioned on my podcast. So, Darby Allin and Chris Jericho will face each other next week for the title. And this would not be the last we would see Darby Allin for the evening, so we'll have that. Next up, we had women's tag team action. We had Dr. Britt Baker and AEW Women's Champion Rio taking on Bea Priestley and Ima Saraka. I think is how you say her name. I thought this was a decent match. By far, I thought this was the weakest match on the show, unfortunately. It was a little sloppy at times for my liking. I don't know, it seemed like the chemistry was off a little bit. There was definitely a couple noticeable botches, at least from what I saw. But overall, I thought, obviously they're teasing something with Britt Baker and Rio. They do win the match. Britt Baker submitted Sakura to the Mandible Claw, a variation of it, and got the big win here. They've really protected Britt Baker, and I know she's apparently now 5-1 in AEW competition. So obviously, Britt Baker is she is the face of the women's division, even though she's not holding the title yet. And of course, it was announced on the show that next week Britt Baker and Rio will have a match for the AEW Women's title. I'm not sure if they're going to put the belt on Britt Baker. Look, I think long term she is the face, and they're going to put the title on her. I don't think they're going to do it yet. I think it'd be a little early. You got to at least give Rio a run with the title here for a little while. But still, they picked up a tag team win here, and that was that. We had the Best Friends. They cut a promo from ringside after that, and they were talking about their upcoming match with SCU. That's Southern Cal Uncensored. They were going to start talking about how they feel about that match, but instead they turned to Orange Cassidy, who was sitting behind him in the crowd there. I was just kind of relaxing there, and Cassidy gave the thumbs up, and the crowd seemed to have liked that. So the crowd is really taking to this Orange Cassidy person, so we'll see if he has any interaction with the Best Friends going forward. Next up was one of the feature matches on the card. I mean, every match on this card, for the most part, was a pretty solid match, and this was no exception. Jon Moxley made his AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite debut here. He took on Shawn Spears, of course, the former Ty Dillinger in WWE. Tully Blanchard's out with Shawn Spears as his manager. And yes, Tully Blanchard does get involved at one point during the match. He would eventually, at one point during the match, as it was going on, he threw Moxley into the ring steps. He was doing his thing. I mean, for someone that is up in age, and that's not being disrespectful. I mean, it's Tully Blanchard has a lot of experience. He's been around the wrestling industry a long time. He still moves around pretty good. He still looks like he's in pretty good shape. So, yeah, it's nice to see him actually not just be kind of a stick in the mud. He's actually moving around and being motivated here. So, but ultimately, in the end, it goes back and forth for a while, and ultimately, Moxley does win after hitting the Death Rider, which is a double underhook arm DDT. The movie used to be what he used to call Dirty Deeds back in WWE. He does beat Shawn Spears in the end and gets the win, as he should have. I figured Moxley was going over here, but it was still a pretty good match. So after that action was done, Kenny Omega made his way to the entrance here, where he had a barbed baseball wired bat, and he also had a barbed wire wrapped broom. Omega tossed the bat to Moxley and encouraged him to pick it up as he went to, and they're doing a little bit of a stare down, and Pac, who was doing color commentary for this match, left the commentary position and actually attacked Omega from behind with a chair, and then eventually he eventually left them laying. Omega was down. Moxley was able to eventually get Pac to leave, and he kind of chased him off a little bit. And then Moxley, who had the bat, remember, and they could have teased maybe him using the bat here on Omega. He didn't do it. He just tossed it down and then just left with Omega down on the ground as he left. So that's what we had there. And then finally, in your main event for the evening in tag team action, we had AEW World Champion Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, two members of the Inner Circle. They took on Dustin Rhodes and Hangman Adam Page here. That's a good match. Every guy really gets a chance to shine here. A lot of back and forth stuff here. Rhodes and Page appeared to have gained the upper hand at one point, but then Jake Hager eventually snuck into the ring during the match and attacked Dustin, which followed Jericho to score the victory. He hit his Judas Effect finish here, the kicks, so that got the win here. And then eventually they did a beatdown angle here as the match finished. The Inner Circle eventually came in and attacked Rhodes Dustin Rhodes and Adam Page. And then the lights went out, and then Cody was actually in the ring. He came out to make the save here, try to get things on track. Santana and Ortiz cut him off quickly, and then MJF ran in with a chair for the save as well. They were teasing maybe a turn with MJF on Cody. They didn't do it here. He eventually laid out the heels. He laid out Santana, Ortiz, and Jericho with the chair, and then Jericho was able eventually to get some revenge and lay out MJF before the Young Bucks actually came out to make the final save in this whole sequence. And then Jericho's getting ready to bail, and then Darby Allin actually comes out. He rides down on a skateboard and actually uses the skateboard as a weapon to lay out Jericho. And he eventually comes into the ring with the baby faces standing tall here. So that's how AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite went off the air. Yes, Jericho and Guevara did win. I think I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I'll say it again. Yes, because Jericho won with his Judas Effect on Dustin Rhodes, of course. So there you go. We had that. So that's AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite. It took place from Boston. Let's talk about WWE NXT here. Of course, it's from Full Sail University down in Winter Park, Florida. They opened with the NXT Cruiserweight title match between Lio Rush and the champion Drew Gulak. This was great stuff here. Lio Rush, just seconds into the match, had hit a Spanish fly on Gulak, but Gulak was able to recover. He dominates with his size and strength for a while. Eventually, Drew Gulak gets the Gulak on the Lio Rush, but he's able to escape. Rush attempted a Dragon Sleeper reversal, but Gulak eventually picked him up for the Cyclone Clash. Got a close 3 count on that. It was a very long 2 count is what I'm trying to say. Because Lio Rush had found the bottom rope during the pin attempt. Gulak went to the top rope to go for the attempt to superplex. Rush blocked it and immediately took advantage. He hit a splash, then he hit a springboard stunner, and then he hit the final hour, which is essentially it's like a splash, almost like a frog splash off the top rope. 1, 2, 3. And Lio Rush is the new NXT Cruiserweight Champion. I'm actually very surprised they did the title change here. I didn't think they were doing that. I figured Gulak was going to retain, but they wanted to do something to get people talking here. So Lio Rush is the new NXT Cruiserweight Champion. Next up, we had ladies singles competition with Rhea Ripley taking on Aaliyah. Of course, Vanessa Bourne was out with Aaliyah. This did not last very long. This was a showcase for Rhea Ripley. And just she took care of Aaliyah pretty quickly here and won the match. Afterwards, she grabbed the mic. She put over Shayna Baszler's dominance in NXT in the women's division. But she says she is going to be coming after Shayna Baszler herself. And then she's going to take the title. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, tag team competition. We have Breezango. That's Tyler Breeze and Fandango. They were scheduled to take on Everrise, but that did not happen because Jason Riker walked out carrying both members of that tag team. They were laid out here, and then we got the rest of the Forgotten Sons that came out here. So they are the team that faces Breezango here. Breezango gets the early advantage here. Fandango had hit a sunset bomb, then he hit the Topco Hilo on the Riker. Wesley Blake, however, followed up with one of his own, and then the Suns followed with Memory Remains to win the match. So, not a whole lot to it here. Forgotten Sons get a big win here over Breezango, and then eventually Riker taking out Everrise. That was kind of an interesting way to do it, but overall there was really not much to say about the match. Forgotten Sons, rightfully so, won the match. We had Cameron Grimes taking on Boa next here. Again, this was not a whole lot to this. This was almost a squash. Killian Dane had come out just before the bell had rung. Grimes had pointed up to the ramp, distracting Boa, and then he eventually hit the running double stomp. And then that was it. And he won the match in pretty quick fashion here. Eventually, Killian Dane does come in. Grimes escapes, but Boa is not so lucky. He eventually hits Boa with the Vader Bomb in the corner and then drags him out of the ring and throws him on the announce table. And he went on to say in a screaming fashion, "This is just the beginning." So apparently Killian Dane is ready for some more action. We get a Damian Priest vignette that happened next. He's putting over Pete Dunne, but he says when he beats, he's going to be beating Pete Dunne and then his name will live forever. So we'll see what happens there. Next match on the card was the Swerve Isaiah Scott taking on Roderick Strong here. Of course, the rest of the Undisputed Era came out to the ramp during the match. The match is going along mostly back and forth here. Towards the end of the match, however, Swerve had had the momentum of the match. Then he looked over to the Undisputed Era, which was a mistake, and then ultimately Roderick Strong was able to recover, and he won with the stronghold submission on the Scott to win the match. After the match, Adam Cole got on the mic and tells the crowd to give it up to Swerve, basically putting him over. And then, he gives him praise, but he just says he's not on the level of Roderick Strong, and then he basically says that the reason why Finn Balor and Tommaso Ciampa are back is because they want to step up to the Undisputed Era. So we had that. Velveteen Dream does interrupt the proceedings here. He's up at the announce table. He puts over some of the Undisputed Era. He tells Strong to let him show what reality is. And then we get this picture on the screen here of Roderick Strong holding the North American title. He's not wearing anything but the belt in his midsection here, and then they do a deal eventually where he says that Roderick Strong, quote, doesn't measure up, and then they show this picture of the belt being gone and then the midsection being pixelated. So they were going for a little risque action here, so we had that. Then eventually, as that was going on, Tommaso Ciampa actually does come out with a crutch and sits in the middle of the ring as the Undisputed Era eventually just leave because they want no part of Ciampa. He gets on the mic and tells Goldie that Daddy's home, so Tommaso Ciampa's back in the fold. Another women's match. What's up next here? We have Bianca Belair taking on Dakota Kai. I thought this was a good match. Dakota Kai, she got some offense in for a while, but Bianca Belair eventually does win because of her physicality and all that. She hit a standing shooting star press, followed soon by the kiss of death to pick up the win here over Dakota Kai. Even though Kai, like I said, looked pretty good in defeat, and then, but Bianca Belair, this was a showcase more for her. Eventually, after the match, she grabs the mic and says that herself, not Rhea Ripley, will be the one to take the title away from Shayna Baszler. So, looks like they could be maybe going towards a triple threat match, maybe a number one contenders match, maybe. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a triple threat match. We'll have to wait and see. Main event of the evening had Walter, the NXT UK champion, taking on Kushida, I think is how you say his name. Both guys undefeated going into this one. Walter just uses his strength here and dominates early on. Kushida comes back, hits a tornado DDT and cartwheel basement dropkick at one point. Ultimately, Walter was able to recover. He suplexed Kushida out, and then Kushida attempted to go for a hoverboard lock. Walter pushed him off and then hit the shotgun dropkick and powerbomb for almost a 3 count. And then ultimately in the end, Walter does hit the ripcord lariat, the strong big clothesline that he has as his finisher, and that was enough for the 1-2-3. And then Kushida has handed his first loss in NXT. And that's how they went off the air. It was also announced that next week, Tommaso Ciampa will take on Angel Garza. They had a little promo thing backstage where Ciampa basically punched him in the face. And then it was also announced in 2 weeks that Roderick Strong and Velveteen Dream will fight for the North American titles. So that's what we had there. So we had that. Let's talk about the ratings real quick. They're in. AEW once again beat NXT in the ratings, though the ratings for both shows actually did drop this week. Wednesday Night Dynamite on TNT drew 1.018 million viewers. That is down from 1.409 last week, while NXT drew 790,000, which is down from 891,000 viewers. Now, Wednesday Night Dynamite was also airing on True TV, so they had two airings or two showings on at the same time. They were on True TV, and that airing on True TV drew 122,000 viewers. So if you combine them, they did 1.14 million viewers. That's still down from where they were last week. I expected they were going to drop, but they still won the ratings for the second week in a row. So we had that, and we'll see what happens. And we'll see if they can keep it going here. Which show is my pick of the week? Which show gets my choice? Last week I went with WWE NXT. This week it's actually very close. But once again, I am going to go with NXT. It's very close. I thought AEW really didn't do anything wrong. But I thought NXT just had, once again, the slightly better action here. Even though AEW did have the Young Bucks lose in shocking fashion in the opening match. The stuff at the end there, at the end of the show there in the tag match, I thought it was a little overbooked for my liking. The women's tag match was a little sloppy. I wasn't a big fan of that. And then, I don't know, I thought NXT just seemed a little bit more smoother as far as things go. So NXT gets my pick of the week. So we're through 2 weeks, and NXT has a 2-0 lead in my book. But that's what we had. So what do you think? You guys let me know in the comments section down below and tell me what show you think won for the week and why. And we'll be back with you next week for episode number 3 of the Wednesday Night Wrestling Blitz. Thanks for checking us out. We'll see you next time. Bye for now, everyone.
For the JBSN Media Network, this is Jenna Green speaking.